Welcome to Off-Duty Engineer. I am Alan. This channel is for some of my scale modeling projects, plastic aircraft, wooden ships, and dioramas to display them. This is a summary of the scale model build of the Curtiss P-40 Warhawk in 1/7 scale. First, the photos of the final result. This model is 1/7 scale with a wingspan of 60 inches or 5 foot or 1.5 meters. This P-40 is a top flight model made in the USA circa 1975. The kit was intended for full radio control standoff competition. I decided to build it for display only, but with full radio control and electric motor for the propeller. The kit was manufactured in about 1975, so the wood is very brittle and the vinyl decals are very old. I decided to build it for show and not for flying. I wanted to add all the radio control servos in with a small electric motor for the prop, for effect. I wanted to show as much of the original wood as possible, so the camo green is on part on the outside, but the rest is wood to view. I received this model kit from my late cousin Aubrey in July 2025. It was unbuilt and most of the parts were in the box. A few other parts were later found. A lot of the parts were needed to be sourced. This P-40 kit build is in 5 parts. Each part is about 1 hour. This first video is the final model with the build in photo essay format. Then the other 4 videos are the detailed build. Here is some interesting history of the Curtiss P-40. The Curtiss P-40 Warhawk is an American single-engined, single-seat, all-metal fighter bomber that first flew in 1938. The Warhawk was used mostly by Allied powers during World War II and remained in frontline service until the end of the war. It was the third most produced American fighter of World War II after the North American P-51 Mustang and the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt. By November 1944, when production of the P-40 ceased, 13,700 had been built, all at Curtiss Wrights Corporation, main production facilities in Buffalo, New York. P-40 Warhawk was the name the United States Army Air Corps gave the plane, making it the official name in the US for all P-40s. The British Commonwealth RAF used the name Tomahawk for models equivalent to the original P-40, P-40B and P-40C. And the name Kitty Hawk for model equivalents to the P-40D and later. Royal Air Force was amongst the first to operate Tomahawks in North Africa, and the unit was the first Allied military aviation to feature the shark mouth logo. The lack of a 2-speed supercharger for the P-40's Allison V1710 engine made it inferior to the Luftwaffe's fighters such as the Messerschmitt Bf-109 or the Focke-Wulf FW-190 at high altitude combat. However, later model P-40s were fitted with a Merlin engine, extending the P-40's capabilities. Interestingly, a twin-engined P-40 was prototyped but did not make production. Next is the details of the top flight P-40 kit. This is the top flight wood model kit designed for radio control standoff competition. This RC competition class was for 60-inch wingspan. Top Flight termed this 60-inch P-40 the red box kit. The kit is optimized for speed and maneuverability, not necessarily for accuracy to the original P-40. The kit is about 1/7 scale. Another Top Flight P-40 kit was the 72-inch wingspan 1/6 scale, termed the gold kit, and was the most popular. The construction method was different, so I could not use the plans or the manual. Top Flight was a USA company. Later acquisitions founded in the Tower Hobbies Group, then Hobbyco, now Horizon Hobbies in USA. Not much information is available about this Top Flight red box 60-inch kit. I could determine that the design was in the mid-1950s. This particular kit seems to be manufactured in about 1975 in the USA. My cousin Aubrey seems to have purchased this kit in about 1990, either in USA, Denver, Colorado, where he stayed for many years, or in Melbourne, Australia, where they moved to. Either way, the kit is over 50 years old. Aubrey was a keen radio control enthusiast and built a few RC planes. The kit I have seemed to have most of the parts and pieces present and unbuilt. The parts that were missing were the canopy and some of the plastic cowling. Many further parts not part of the kit needed to be sourced and purchased, such as the prop, spinner, wheels, the RC gear, etc. Oh, I forgot to mention, there were no plans in this kit. That would be a challenge. The best information I found online was a review by a UK group called Outer Zone. The review was dated 1974 with an update in 2018. I thank Outer Zone for this detailed review. Outer Zone had a few photos of completed P-40 kits. It also had a full plan drawing all on one page. I was delighted to find this and could scale it to 1:1. There was no instruction manual for this kit. I presume that it was intended for experienced builders. I was in for a steep learning curve. Next is a short summary of the building of the P-40 kit. The first step was to create the 1:1 plans to work from. I took the one plan sheet downloaded from the Outer Zone website review. I put this into PowerPoint and expanded to full size, working on the wingspan of 60 inches. I then sectioned the whole page into separate A3 pages that I could print on my Canon A3 inkjet printer. This was 22 A3 pages. Then I taped some of the pages together to make workable sections. I found this photo on the interweb of a top flight red box P-40. It became my reference image. The tailplane was built first. There were no cut wood parts in the kit, so I used new mod wood from the arts and crafts section of the local hardware store. Stabilizers, elevators, tailplane and rudder panels. For the stabilizers, I thickened the panel with another 3mm thick balsa wood on top, then shaped to a curve from the front to 0 at the back of the elevators. This gave a better look. Garage is for larger tools, crosscut saw, drill press, vise, hand tools, etc. For the elevators, I used 2.5mm steel pins to strengthen. Finish all in clear wood sealer. Next was to start the wings. This is where I cut the original wood from the kit for the first time. Point of no return. Now committed to build this P-40. Yes. Start to cut the wing ribs. The wood is brittle and I need to fix it up with thin CA as I go. Lay out the wings 1:1 on the plan from the PowerPoint. Use the plan to lay out the wing, tape the main struts down, use old dominoes to keep the ribs perpendicular. I used the taper spacer to ensure that the 2.5 degree washout along the wing. Add the wing struts and the trailing edge wood, glue all in place with PVA glue using weights to set. Add the leading edge to the wing. Then do all again for the other wing, direct to the plan. Add the landing gear bars to both wings. I added some strengthening wood in as well. I wanted to make the landing struts removable so that they could be taken out of the way during the build. Wood cover plates and screws were used. Next was the tricky task of joining the wings. The plans are taped together, now 60 inches wide, and cover the whole workbench. The thick rib for the center W1 is prepared. The dihedral of 2.5 inches at the tips is calculated to be 60mm at the last rib W10. Blocks of wood are cut for this. Then carefully cut the wood from each wing until they join correctly. I used an aluminium tube to clamp the leading edge into a straight line. I did beef the main joining struts from the 2-inch ones provided using 2 layers of 3-ply, much better. All good so far. The new radio control gear arrived from Amazon. FlySky RC controller, a 6-channel receiver, and from separate vendors a 7.2 volt battery, charger, 6x servos, a small electric motor, motor controller for speed control, and a switch to be able to switch some of the nav lights and cockpit lights on. All the P-40 control surfaces would be operable: elevators, rudders, ailerons and flaps. The electric motor would spin the prop up to 100 RPM for display only, not for flight. I tested it all, good to go. Next, I started the fuselage construction. Delicately extracted the parts from the 50-year-old wood, needed a few fix-ups with thin AC glue. I printed the relevant parts of the plans on A3 and taped them together, spread on the table. I used the plan and a square to cut the first 2 bulkheads correctly. I added thickening sections to the fuselage sides and test fit so far. On detailed study, the 2 side panels needed a bit of work to straighten. The old wood had warped some 1 to 2 millimeters over the length, opposite on each side. For the right side, I had to add a sliver along the top, at the front and the back, and trim to straight. For the left side, the center section needed the filler. Then the two were exact and fitted the plan correctly. Now the first two bulkhead assemblies could be fitted. Then, using the dimensions of the plan transferred to the side panels, the rest of the bulkheads could be fitted. The fuselage tapers to the rear and the bulkheads determining the curve. Keep the clamps on the back to prevent the end from opening up. Then the filler for the fuselage bottom and the tail end could be completed. The only bulkhead still to fit is the cockpit rear, as this is at an angle and I need the canopy to properly locate this one. Next, I could prepare the fitting of the tail pieces to the fuselage. I used toothpick dowels to ensure that the fit was the same each time. Not glued yet, I had to fit the hinges first. I procured Dubro hinges for the control surfaces. Note that the plans still called for material hinges. That was 50 years ago. I set up a 1mm milling bit into the drill press in the garage and a guide so that the hinge slots could be done predictably. The mill made 7mm deep, then I used a 1mm drill in the Dremel on a stand to get the 12mm depth required. I prepared all 9 of the tail hinges and test fitted the result, not glued yet. I needed to add the nav light to the top of the tail, a yellow LED. I used thin wire and cut a slot in the edge of the tail fin wood, down along the bottom and then to enter the fuselage. Now I could glue the hinges in. CA would be too fast, so I used 5-minute epoxy. Push the epoxy deep into the slots, wipe off the excess, then fit the parts together and pull them together to seat the hinges. The fuselage was put on a level base and the tail stabilizers fitted. Level, check, square, level, etc. Patience. Then glued it into place. The RC tie rod was connected to the stabilizer. The tail wheel was a Dubro 1-inch diameter rubber wheel. The assembly was made up with brass rod bent to suit, with extension into the rudder. This is so that the rudder and the wheel were connected and would turn together on the same servo. The new plastic mouldings and canopy arrived, ordered from Aero Scale in Queensland in Australia. Russell Mitchell was a goldmine of information, skills and stock. Thank you. I compared the old and new mouldings and canopy. I decided to use the old plastic mouldings and the new canopy. I decided to show the canopy open, so this will have to be cut carefully later. Having the canopy, I could now fix the last bulkhead into the cockpit rear at the angle of the canopy. I also added the front panel at a slight angle for the cockpit instrumentation. The rear fuselage could now be skinned on top. The top can be closed up because I have access from the bottom via the removable panel. I used new 1.5mm mod wood because the bend was quite tight and that old balsa wood would just crack and not form easily. Trimmed, sanded and test fit the canopy again. All good so far. The 2 tail blocks were shaped and fitted. All structural work from the cockpit backwards is now complete. Back to the wings. The control surfaces were made up from wood in the kit, the flaps and the ailerons. Remember to add the chamfers, 2 for the ailerons to go up and down and 1 for the flaps that go down only. Then the hinge slots were milled. Hinges were fitted and glued with epoxy very carefully. Skinning of the wings is next. There are only 12 sheets of this balsa in the kit and I worked out that I needed all 12. I could not source more because this was all imperial dimensions. No margin for waste or error. But before skinning, I needed to complete the RC servos in the wings. I decided to use 1 servo per surface, total of 4 servos. This is instead of the plan showing 1 servo and linkages to 2 surfaces each. Very complicated. I tested the servos in parallel and they worked perfectly. The geometry on each servo is different and unique. This took a bit of experimentation to finalize. I decided to make loose panels to be able to access the servos in the future. I also thought that clear polycarbonate windows would be great to see the servo compartments. I used cardboard to create templates and used these to cut the polycarbonate. The hard polycarb was cut with various methods: drop saw, Dremel cutter, drill, files, etc. Then screwed these into place. It looked good. Next, test fit the wings to the fuselage. Complete the wiring and connections between the wings and fuselage. Test the RC gear and servo so far. Now to get to the skinning of the wings. The 12 balsa sheets in the kit are needed, so no margin for error. Measure twice, cut once. Plan carefully using baking sheet as tracing paper, then transfer to the balsa. Skin most of the bottom of the wings first. Work around the polycarb windows and the landing gear cover strips. With the bottom skin on, the wing tips were next. These are raw blocks of balsa with the basic cut done but have to be fully shaped. I added some strengthening blocks in the wings and then dowels for proper location and strength. Now the tops of the wings could be skinned. This would be very visible on the completed model, so I wanted to get this nice and neat. And remember, I have no spare sheets, so no room for error. I planned and fit a few sheets in advance each time. I did the leading edge and trailing edge, leaving the center still open. In the garage, the wing tips can now be completed. A heavy rasp and sandpaper was used, 80 grit, 100, 200, then 400 grit. The last two sheets could now be completed on the top skin. Wood filler was used to smooth the joints over, not much was needed. Finish off with 400 grit. Then 2 coats of timber sealer to strengthen the wood grain, then 400 grit to smooth off each coat. At this point I could complete the alignment of the wings and fuselage. The wings are located by a wooden dowel in front and fixed by 2 bolts near the back. The symmetry was set by string from the tail wheel to each of the wings at the outer edge of the ailerons. Then the fixing bolt holes could be drilled, holes tapped into the hardwood and the bolts fitted. Pleasing that there was minimal gap at the wing roots. A quick segue was to add some detail to the cockpit. I procured a pilot figure, a woman pilot upper body, at a suitable scale. I added a seat and put a photocopy of the cockpit dashboard on. It looked great so far. I decided not to use the parts in the kit for the wing roots because the wood was old and too fragile. I decided to make them out of new mod wood, 6.5mm thick, 3 layers would make up 20mm thickness, enough to shape to suit. I cut the layers using cardboard template from the fuselage. The curve was formed with a Dremel, sander barrel and a lot of patience. Glued to the fuselage with the wings in place with a baking sheet to prevent glue transfer. Then timber sealant. Looked good. The electrical circuitry in the fuselage and wings could now be completed. In the wings is 2 servo circuits and the nav lights on the wingtips. In the fuselage is the receiver, battery, 2 servos, cockpit and tail lights, motor speed controller and the electrical motor. Between the fuselage and wings is 3 connectors. I made mountings for the battery and receiver. Mounted the main on-off charge switch through the side of the fuselage. The electric motor is ready for the mechanical connection to the propeller shaft to follow. Tested everything, all good. During handling of the wings, the inevitable happened. I pressed my thumb through the skin of the wing. How annoying. This was a product of not enough care and the very old brittle balsa wood. The repair work was done. Satisfactory. I reassessed the plastic parts I was to use, the old white plastic parts and the new canopy. To complete the wing, I added the molding for the radiator under the wing center. The old plastic cut remarkably well using a Dremel and circular diamond tip blade, then trimmed to fit and glue with thick CA glue. Now to tackle the complicated front end. The plastic moldings are in 2 parts and a bit of work is required to get them to fit properly. The sides also need wooden cheeks to complete the fit. The fit was nice and tight with minimal gaps. This cowling could be removed for access. I wanted to prepare the nose on top. This would be solid wood blocks shaped to fit. This piece did not need to be removable because I could access from the bottom with the plastic molding removed. But I could not finalize the shaping because the spinner had not arrived yet, and this would set the run of the curve. So just basic shaping is preparation, but not glued yet. To do the skinning of the top of the fuselage front, I used new mod wood because of the tight curve. I soaked the mod wood wet and formed it over a cylinder till dry. Velcro strips were used for clamping with wood to even the pressure out for good contact. The last gap was closed with a strip on each side and then wood filler to smooth out. Trim to fit, front and back, timber sealer, and test fit the nose block. While still waiting in anticipation for the spinner from Aero Scale in Queensland, I would work on the canopy. I used the new canopy from Aero Scale. It was vac formed well, nice and clear. I decided to have the canopy open, so the canopy was cut at the opening point. Nervous work with the Dremel. Then I fixed brass to the edges, 132-inch brass angle, gently formed and incrementally glued with CA. Yes, also patient and nervous work, but a great result. Rails were added to the sides of the fuselage from scrap polystyrene sheet. Because the canopy is so big, I decided to mask and paint it from the inside. The large scale allowed this. Used black primer and black spray paint. See the result. I was exceptionally pleased with this. The spinner finally arrived from Aero Scale. It is a masterpiece. Spun aluminium spinner with a machined aluminium base. It was made for a 3-bladed prop, which I wanted to use for this display. Russell did a really great job. Thank you. The wood block on the nose could now be shaped to the fuselage and the spinner, then sanded well, then a bit of fill and sanding, then glued into place and timber sealer. Here are the photos in wood finish. Quite stunning, what do you think? Next was the final painting. For the camo, I decided to use dark green, but instead of the sand color, I would leave the wood showing. The balsa wood color was close to the sand color. I wanted to show maximum of the original wood for display. For the bottom, I would only paint parts in the light grey blue and show the rest as wood. I also decided to airbrush the main USA roundels and the shark mouth. The original vinyl sheets seemed too old to be used on curved surfaces. I started with the easy tasks first. The blue-grey bottom used a Tamiya spray can. Mask the radiator under the wing, prime and paint that. Then the front air scoop and the underside cowling. The engine exhausts would end up machine grey. Canopy slides would be light sand, also Tamiya spray can. The intake on the nose was sand colour, but I would later change this to black. Next, the camo green. To be masked and Tamiya spray can. Primer would not be needed because of the good timber sealant used as the base. I tested this on a sample. Using a light soft pencil first and then 3mm Tamiya masking tape, the green area was masked. Then fill in the rest with 6mm Tamiya tape, then 25mm frog tape, then sheets of paper. Need lots of space and ventilation for a 1/7 scale kit. Unmask with bated breath. The wood looks good against the green. All good so far. I used printed copies of the decals for planning and viewing on the P-40. I procured Tamiya mask sheets of 280 by 250mm. The USA roundels would fit onto this. I scanned the roundels 1-to-1 and tidied the image up on the computer using a good old PowerPoint that can work in exact dimensions. I then printed this 1-to-1 on the back of the Tamiya mask sheets, 4 of them. The mask sheets could then be cut with a number 10 blade and transferred as a mask to the fuselage and wings. I used the outside of the Tamiya sheet to mask the area of the roundel. I decided to use the grey primer because of the different colours on the base and the white to be put on top to give a more even colour finish. I water airbrush and Vallejo grey primer. While drying, I cut the other parts of the Tamiya decal sheets. The white was Vallejo and airbrush a few coats. When dry, use the star and bar decal sheets cut and then spray the dark blue. I used Vallejo 2/3 dark blue with 1/3 black. Unmask and minor tidy up, repeat 4 times. Looks good. Next big task was the shark mouth. I left this till last to get experience doing the roundels first. I decided to do all the masking by hand and not to use the Tamiya sheet that I had printed. I would only cut the teeth from the sheet. This would all be airbrushed and Vallejo paint. The sequence was 1. Masking the outer, then primer and white. 2. Mask for the blue line and paint this. 3. Then mask the teeth to keep them white. 4. Then mask and paint the red. 5, then mask and paint the black, then unmask everything and hope for a good result. I think it turned out fantastic. To seal the paint on the fuselage and the wings, I used acrylic gloss, a Dulux spray can from the local hardware store. Had to be acrylic, not enamel. 2 coats to seal, and then added the last few vinyl decals that I cut from the original 50 old sheets. These decals were going onto flat surfaces, so I thought this would be okay. They did stick well. I fitted the spinner and decided to keep this original aluminium to display the workmanship. I fitted the canopy and the female pilot. I fixed the wings and the fuselage together again, tested the radio controls. Yeah, finished. Here are some final photos again. This was a very satisfying build. The build took about 3 months build time over 6 months. It was a great learning curve. I love building different types of models for different skill sets. Plastic aeroplanes and armor, wood ships, scratch-built dioramas, even Lego and mini blocks. This P-40 was a wood and radio control experience. This P-40 was in honor of Aubrey as memory of the day. The P-40 is now proudly on display in my office, hanging from the ceiling. Here is a quick look at some of my recent models completed. Some of these took first and second prizes at recent competitions. You can see all my scale model builds on YouTube at OffDutyEngineer 57. My credo is create, inspire, enjoy. Thank you. That is all. I hope that you enjoyed this. Please follow, like, subscribe, etc. See you next time. Thank you.